And after a while, would just wake up in the middle of the night and walk to the bathroom and literally just pass out.
Josie, how did you find carnivore?
Well, out of desperation, really, because I was, as most people are, it seems to be on carnivore. A lot of people start carnivore because they're really, really sick. And basically, I've been slowly getting really, really sick. Well, according to my mom, it was ever since I was a kid, but I didn't realize it until I was in my 20s when it got really bad that it interfered with my life and my job. So basically, uh, to sum it up, well, according to my mom, when I was a kid, I'm adopted. So I was not breastfed. I was on formula. So I assume, like most formulas, is probably full of sugars and seed oils and shit like that. So that was probably not a very good start for me. And she told me that from the get go, I had a lot of sinus issues. I would puke mucus, apparently. I don't remember that, but my mom told me I puked mucus. I was just always stuffy and a lot of sinus problems. I would say I was fortunate in a way because I was raised in a tiny village of 1,000 population. So we had access to no restaurants, no business, no nothing. The only thing we had for a business was a convenience store, like a truck stop. And I would never really go there until I was older. So yeah, I would only eat food from whatever was in the house. And my mom, like, she would cook very plainly, like whole foods, but like no salt, no spice, no nothing, because my dad was riddled with high blood pressure. So like they thought that salt was bad. So the food was very, very plain and always whole foods from what I can remember anyways. And basically, I would have sugary treats here and there, because she would buy them. So we would have like ice cream sandwiches and stuff. So like the meals were pretty, I would say, like considering the way that generation was thought to eat, it was fairly healthy. But the problem was I was a complete sugar addict for the snacks in between. Like she would buy these boxes of ice cream sandwiches and they were gone within 24 hours. It was the same thing with, it could be cheese strings, it could be anything. It would just be gone so fast. My mom would get mad at me because she was like, I just went to the grocery store, and since we lived in this tiny village with nothing in it, to go to the grocery store, we had to drive all the way to the city, which was like 20 minutes away. So she was like, can you stop eating all the things in one go? And I was like, I don't know. I can't stop. So sometimes she would be like, well, you're out of treats until I go back to the store. And then I was out and that was it. So I had to just deal with it that way. But I think my body was kind of signaling to me, like, because we were like low fat as per these families and stuff. But like sometimes my dad would cook bacon in the microwave with a paper towel on it. And then the paper towel was full of grease, right? When the bacon was done cooking. And then behind his back, I would get the paper towel and I would suck on it for the bacon fat. I would just suck on it. And then my parents were really mad at me and they were like, you can't just suck the bacon fat out of the paper towel. So yeah, that was, now that I know what I know, I'm like, my body just probably was so desperate for fat that I was just like obsessed with the bacon fat because we were eating meat, but like it was really lean meat, like potato, veggies, and really lean meat. My mother tend to really overcook things. So like there's just, from what I can remember, there was no fat really in our diet, although it was whole foods and it was pretty healthy. Um the So my issues were really starting when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I was riddled with acne. I was not fat at all. I was healthy weight, but I was riddled with acne. My nose was always kind of acting up. And when I was 19, I moved to the biggest city in our province. I'm in Canada, so it's provinces, but like so then suddenly I had access to all these restaurants, all these things that I never had access to. So I started eating really poorly because I was a really stubborn kid. I refused to learn anything from my mother. I would not listen to her about laundry. I would not listen to her about dishes, nothing. So when I went out on my own, I was like, I don't know how to do anything. So I just started eating out at restaurants and stuff. So the first time I started gaining weight, I was about 20 years old, and I did not notice because I never had a problem with it. I never was a person to care about the scale or anything. I just ate whatever I wanted. So I didn't realize until I had a friend that was very straightforward. And one day she looked at me and she was like, Josie, you're kind of getting heavy. Like you need to watch for that. And then I was like, what? I don't gain weight. I have a super high metabolism. And then I went on the scale and I was 150 pounds. And when I was in high school, I was 115 pounds. So I was like, oh, she's right. I did gain weight. And I had no idea how that happened because like I just had no knowledge of like the restaurants. And I was just like, I always say I'm from the forest. I don't know anything about anything because I'm from the forest. So I was like, oh, wow, like how did this happen? What do I do? I don't know. And frankly, I was a little concerned, but at the same time, I was like, "Ugh, who cares?" And then I was just like, okay, I'll try to eat whole foods at least, but like if I don't lose weight, whatever. So I started just going back to whole foods, like I would eat strawberries and stuff like that. And magically, I lost the weight with no exercise, nothing. It was probably because I was still very young and my metabolism was still running high enough to allow that. So I just cut out all processed food, and that was enough for that time. So that worked. So at that point, I had a really keen sense of smell and taste. Like I was really like, like when you lose some senses, it's like you live life in 2D instead of 3D. And I never realized that until I lost my sense of taste and smell. And that happened basically when I was around 23, 24 years old. We moved to this old house that I did not want to move in because I thought it was sketchy, and I was like, something's wrong with that house. But like my friend really wanted to move to that house, so my suspect is that my sinus problems really accelerated when we moved there because like a couple months into living there, we heard what sounded like a waterfall downstairs, and I was like, so we went and investigated, and there was indeed a waterfall in the basement, and there was mushrooms everywhere. Everywhere there was mushrooms. So we were like, oh wow, there must be black mold somewhere in this house. So we started looking because her boyfriend had really bad asthma problems and they had gotten really worse since we moved there. We found a big patch of black mold behind their bed. So I was like, oh, well, that's not healthy. So basically, we told the landlord we were going to move out. Like it was a health hazard. We had to move out, and the landlord was really mad at us and didn't want us to move out. And we did anyways. We moved out in a blizzard. We didn't care. We moved out. So my suspicion is that that really damaged my sinuses, although it still wasn't that bad at that point. When it really, really, really got bad was like when I was like, I would say 2, 3 years after that mushroom house incident, when I was like 26. That's when I lost my sense of taste and smell completely. My nose was constantly running, going crazy, infections. I had like massive pressure here to the point where I'm a software developer and I am also a fantasy novelist. So coding requires a lot of mental power, but I call it my real job is to write fantasy novels, but I do software development because I need to pay the bills. But anyways, those two jobs both require a lot of mental focus. And after a while, I was like, I can't do this. I can't focus. Everything was so stuffed up that sometimes I would hear my nose crack. Like it was just cracking, like under pressure. Like some days I was like, my nose is just gonna, the bone is gonna break. It's gonna break. Something's going on. There's something wrong. Like the nose is just gonna break. So I went to my doctor, and he referenced me to an ant specialist because he ran allergy tests and all these things, and it all came out negative. Like he couldn't find anything. So he was like, I don't know. Let's send you to the specialist. So Canada's healthcare system is really bad right now. But back then it was a little better, but still kind of bad. So my province, the ent specialists were really overwhelmed. So he had to tell me I had to go to another province if I didn't want to wait years to see the specialist. And I was like, right now I can't breathe, I can't taste, I can't smell, I can't work, I couldn't sleep anymore because I can't breathe, you can't sleep. So I was like, I need to see a specialist right now, or else I'm gonna lose my job eventually because I just was not productive at all. I couldn't do anything. And I was really afraid to lose my job. So I waited a year to finally see the specialist in the other province. And when I finally saw the specialist, at that time, basically, I cleaned up my diet really, and I was basically eating broccoli, cauliflower, any type of lean meat, fish or chicken breasts, or any lean protein, basically. In the morning, it would be eggs, spice, and cashew milk. And that's pretty much what I was eating at that point. And I was back to a pretty healthy weight, like 125. But like my sinuses were just completely messed up. So eventually I started having these weird night fits. I've never heard of anybody else that has these types of night fits. So basically what I would do is I would wake up and think that something that was happening, I assume from my dreams or something, was really happening in real life, but I was completely conscious, like I was awake, but I was assured that whatever was not happening was happening. So, for example, one time I thought that there was a sniper in the window and the sniper was going to shoot me and my girlfriend. So I literally jumped on my poor girlfriend that was peacefully sleeping to take the bullet for her. But there was no sniper. And then suddenly, like about 30 seconds to 2 minutes in, I would suddenly snap out of it and be like, that makes no sense. And then it's like I woke up. It was really weird. Like another example was like we have an AC machine in the room, and one time I woke up and I thought that the AC machine was spewing out toxic air, and I almost smashed it. Like I took I took a book and I was ready to smash it because I thought it was poisoning me. And then I was suddenly I was like, that makes no sense. And then I stopped. And that would happen a bunch of time for a bunch of different situations. And like I don't know what it was, but since carnivore, there's no more of that. But yeah, like that was weird. So, anyways, when I finally met my ant specialist, I was 27 years old. They diagnosed me with chronic sinus inflammation with polyps, which was idiopathic, of course, because they didn't know why it was happening because all the tests they ran was negative or they couldn't find anything. So he put me on these steroid sprays, but frankly, they didn't help at all. And back then, I was back up to 145 pounds, even though I was trying so hard to eat whole foods. But I was eating really low carb and low fat. It was really just greens and lean meat. So I think my hormones or something were just tanking. I just was not feeling well at all. But I thought I was healing. I was eating really healthy because I was trying to fix all of this. Anyways, after fighting tooth and nail with my ant specialist, I had to go back like 6 times, and that was in another province. So I had to take sick days to go there and miss work. And it took like 6 appointments for him to be like, okay, I'm gonna operate on you. I'm just gonna rip all the polyps out. And I was like, thank God, finally. So finally, he cleaned out multiple polyps, including one that went from here all the way up to here. Like one big polyp like this inside my nose. It's crazy. And that fixed everything for a while because it cleaned everything up. But of course, the inflammation was still there. So for like a couple of months, I could smell and taste, and I was doing better. And after a while, it returned. I slowly started losing my sense of smell and taste again. And then I panicked because I was like, I cannot live like this. And like, I can't. And the insomnia came back and everything came back. So I was like, oh, I can't. So my specialist put me on the prednisone, these steroids, but since they're really strong and like it was just like sinus problems, so he was like, look, the side effects and the damage are really not worth it just for like sinus problems. So what we did is he prescribed me really really strong prednisone for 5 days at a time every 3 months. And when I would take those prednisone, everything was gone for like a week or two, and then it would come back until my next dose. So I was like, you know what, this is not working. And I just got sicker and sicker. I couldn't sleep, and after a while, would just wake up in the middle of the night and walk to the bathroom and literally just pass out and wake up on the floor. It was so bad. And after a while, I went to a naturopath because I was like, you know what, conventional medicine is not working for me, so I'll try naturopath. So he naturopath did these food sensitivities, blood test on me, and I have according to that test, the worst reaction to egg whites that the naturopath had ever seen in her life. She was like, I can't even put them on a chart. Like it was just off the charts. Like it was so bad. So she was like, no more eggs for you ever. And then she was like, cashews are in the red, wheat and milk were in the yellow. So it was like reacting, but not as much. And then she was like, what did you say you're eating every morning again? I was like, cashew milk and eggs. And then she was like, uh-huh. So she was like, no more of that. And I was like, sure thing. So what I did is, since I had to cut out milk, wheat, eggs, and cashew, I basically kind of went keto without really realizing it, because if you remove milk and wheat and eggs, it's like almost every food that you can that you can eat, really. So it was mainly like whole foods and lean meat. I just went. I was like, no, you know what? I'm just gonna broccoli and like greens and like lean meat, and that's it. That was really, really, really strict. And that seemed to keep me going for a while, but eventually it just I went down all the way down to 119 pounds. Like when I got my surgery, I was 145. And then went to the naturopath, so I cut out all those foods. I went down to 119 pounds, but I lost a bunch of muscle mass on the way because I was barely eating. Um, and at that point, I was like around 29 years old, and I just eventually the inflammation just, and then I lost my sense and smell again. So at that point, I was like, you know what? Nothing is working. I give up. I'll just eat whatever I want. So I started eating candy and fast food and garlic fingers and whatever, anything. I just didn't care anymore. So that really didn't help my case. So at 30, I was 30 right when the pandemic hit in 2020. I had super low blood pressure. I was cold all the time. Thank goodness we were not working because like everything was closed. I was miserable. I was taking because weed is legalized at that point in Canada. So I was taking weed edibles just to keep me kind of numb, like just high, and because I was just so miserable. And one day I had a massive panic attack off these edibles. And after that, like the insomnia got so much worse that I was sleeping an average 3 to 4 hours a night for like years at that point, like after that panic attack. And I gained all my weight back. It didn't matter what I did. I just had no energy. I went back up to 150 pounds and I was like, oh, I I was just wrecked. And after a while I thought I was just going to die of lack of sleep because that's literally how it felt. Like so one day I woke up, I felt really off. I walked into the living room and suddenly I just dropped on the floor. I don't know how long it was, but I just woke up and I went back to bed and I was like, okay, this is like I'm gonna die. Like I feel like I'm dying. So I have a childhood friend that I grew up with, and she studied to be a doctor. And by that time, she was just done studying because like we were like 30, 31, so it takes like 10 years to finally be an official like medical doctor. So she was just like graduating and finishing all her things. So I told her about all that, and I was like, please tell me you have something for me because my specialist is not like my specialist and my doctors are not helping. And she just told me the same things that they did. And she actually told me, because I asked her, I was like, did you learn anything about nutrition? And she was like, oh, we had about like a couple hours of nutrition training in like that 10 years. And I was like, okay, sure. So, anyways, I started as much as I could with my energy. I started heavy lifting and just I went back to eating clean greens and lean meat and heavy lifting. I was chronically fatigued. I just pushed through it all, and my only relief was when I had these prednisone every 3 weeks for a couple of days. So, and even though I was doing the heavy lifting and everything, like I was not losing the weight, I was not feeling better. So one day I got really angry at the medical system because I just woke up and I was like, you know what? I am done with all this. I am mad. These specialists and doctors, the naturopath, everything. No, nobody can help me. And I frankly, like, I've never been one to have mental issues. I consider myself to have very, very stable mental issue capacity. And that day I was like, if this does not change, I don't know why I'm even living. Like, what is the point of living if I, and I've never had depression, never had anxiety, never. And at that point I was like, you know what? Like, what's the point? So that's when I started to take it upon myself to just learn everything I could about nutrition on my own. So the first person I think I fell upon was the glucose goddess, and I listened to her and I was like, okay, so you can do all these tricks to control your insulin, but I was like, I had no energy. I had no energy. I was like, I don't want to jump through all these hoops. Like this is so complicated for like I just didn't have the capacity to just plan around all these things. And I was like, no, there must be a better way than this. So I just kept looking. And then I found Dr. Mindy Pels. I bought her book. And then by that time, I was pretty much already low carbs. I mean, I was just eating greens and lean meat. So I was like, okay, well, she's kind of saying like keto and stuff. And then I was like, I'm just going to keep looking, see if I can find something else. And then I found Dr. Ovidia's book because it was like, you know, when you buy a book and then it recommends another book, but it recommended me that book. And I was like, okay, oh, that seems interesting. So I read his book. And then I was like, okay, well, he also recommends like low fat, like keto pretty much. And then I was like, okay, that seems to make sense. And then I read the Big Fat Surprise and all these things. And I learned that like really saturated fat from animals it was all a lie and stuff. So I was like starting to like put two and two together, and I was like, okay, I'm not eating any fats right now, and I'm also not eating any carbs. So like I think I need to up my fats, my animal fats, and I think that's going to help. So I started doing that, and eventually I fell upon Dr. Chafee, who was like, as you know, completely carnivore. And then I was like, you know what? These plant toxin things are making a lot of sense right now because I've been eating a lot of greens because I thought it was the vitamins that I needed to heal with these lean meats. And I was like, okay, so obviously I need a lot of fats for my hormones because I by that time I also found Dr. Elizabeth Bright's book, and that really opened my eyes to the hormone side of everything. So I was like, okay, so I really need animal fats. And the plant toxins are probably really not helping any of this. So I decided I am jumping all in into carnivore, and we'll see how that goes. I started taking Lugol's iodine, and I started doing carnivore all at the same time. And here it's kind of like it's really hard. Our healthcare system is really slow at like we do have free healthcare, but like it's so overwhelmed. It's so hard to see a doctor. It's so hard to see a specialist that I was like, you know what? I'm not really on any medication right now except like my little blue asthma puffer and like that prednisone from time to time. So I was like, I don't need to wean off any medication. I'll just I'll just take Lugol's iodine and do carnivore right off the bat. So that's what I did. So within 1 month of doing that, I had no more period cramps. My asthma attacks were only occasional. My blood pressure went up to like about usually around 110/65. My hands were no longer freezing cold all the time. My acne stopped in its track, and like ever since teenager, I've had problems with acne. And within 3 months, I went down to 119 pounds again, back to my high school weight, basically. And the way that I could tell, because when I was in high school, I bought this belt that I have on me right now. Actually, I bought that belt when I was 14 years old, and it's made of real leather, so it's like the kind of belt that lasts forever. So I know when I was in high school which hole I would put it in, and when I was back down to my high school weight, I was the same weight as in high school, but I could put it in a hole further. So that's how I knew it was muscle mass that I gotten because I was the same weight, but tighter on the belt. So I was like, okay, then it must be muscle mass. So that really impressed me because I had to do no exercise. And by then I was like, no more heavy lifting, no more exercise. I'm just going to let my body heal. And I gained the muscle mass and lost the weight all on my own with no exercise. So that was really surprising to me. So I'm 1 year into carnivore right now. It took me a full year to finally, like, the biggest piece for me was my sinus and my insomnia. My insomnia gradually became better, but that took a long time. And if I had a little cheat or anything in any way, or I noticed if I eat too much chicken, too much like the egg whites, I can't do egg whites, I can't do chicken and pork very much, or else that starts triggering the inflammation in my nose and my insomnia back. But if I mainly focus on beef, it slowly repaired itself, so that was nice. um so I didn't see my specialist again, and frankly, I don't really care because I can breathe and sleep now, and like it's just amazing. And so I just got my blood test result last month because I was curious because it's really hard to get blood tests. I can't just go to pay someone to have blood tests here. You have to go through your medical doctor. And if your medical doctor deems that you don't need blood tests, then you don't get blood tests. And that's it. So I really needed to be like, hey, I'm eating only meat right now. And he panicked, of course. And I was like, ah, okay, now you're going to give me blood tests. Thank you. So it took 1 year to finally get blood tests. I had to make him panic a little bit for him to be like, oh my God. And that little sheet that he like checks off for all the things for the blood test, like he checked everything off because he was so panicked. And he even added custom things to look for. He was just so panicked, so panicked. So, anyways, I got my blood test result, and my vitamin D is a tad low at like 57. So I'm gonna attempt to do like cod oil supplements, see if that helps. But my cholesterol essentially stayed the same except my LDL. My LDL shot up by 50 points. The triglycerides, the HDL, everything else stayed the same. They were pretty good before carnivore, so they didn't really change except the LDL. And my doctor really did not like that. So we made a compromise because I was like, I'm not going on statin. You no, 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 no. No, no. And then he was like, fine, I will prescribe you a multivitamin and you will take this multivitamin and you will have another blood test right before Christmas. And I was like, you know what? Fine. That's a good compromise. That's a multivitamin I can deal with. Sure. I'll take a multivitamin. And my A1C is 5.2 and my fasting glucose is 4.6. The one thing that I discovered actually last month when I got my blood test, we have this brand new app here in my province that we can apply for, so you can see your blood test history from your entire life. So I looked at all my blood tests, and I noticed that all the way back when I was 20 years old, I had an inflammation marker called eosinophils. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but basically, it was 3 times too high when I was 20 years old. And I was like, nobody told me that. And then I looked at all my blood tests throughout my life, and they were all extremely high. And that's a marker that is associated with allergies and sinus inflammations and polyps. So I had these like since teenage years basically, and nobody told me anything about it. I had no idea that existed. My specialist didn't tell me anything about it. So I'm like, okay. But then my blood test result for 1 year into carnivore, I am 20 points away from being in the normal range. So 20 point, like basically the normal range is 0 to 50. I'm at 71. And before I was 3 times too high. So I was 150. So I'm almost there. Like I'm almost there and I'm pushing for it. And I've noticed that I've kind of plateaued. So right now I'm pushing for lion because I think I need lion to really push everything down. And that's pretty much where I'm at now. I'm just struggling to just stick to lion diet to really push it in the normal range.
Wow, what a story. And think that your inflammation was high that whole time and the
Yeah.
doctor's like, oh, it's just idiopathic. It's
Yeah,
like
well, we
not,
don't know what's going on, but then I looked
yeah.
at my own blood test and I saw it immediately. I was like, that's not good. And it was like so young too, like all the way in my early 20s and like teens. It was so high and nobody said anything.
Yeah. It's such a nice feeling when you start eating this way and then everything starts going in the right direction
Hmm.
after feeling so bad for so long and then everything starts moving in the correct way. It's just, yeah, it's a great feeling, right?
I find the hardest thing now is watching my loved ones getting sicker and sicker, and they don't they're all like, well, I want to live my life, I don't want to eat keto or ketovore or carnivore. And then I'm like, you're slowly falling apart in front of my eyes, and it's so hard to watch.
So I can understand the feeling of I want to live my life. I want to eat whatever I want. But I guess the problem is when you have that, when you feel that way, which I've felt like that a lot over my life. I just want to eat
Mm.
what I want and whatever. Um, you don't have the perspective of how much different it will be when you feel good.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, oh, that's the thing for me, like, I feel even better than when I was, like, a teenager, like, it's just night and day, like, I know I'm, like, 34 years old right now, so, like, I'm really glad that I found this way of eating as young as I can, because like, the younger, the better, but, like, it's just insane that I feel better than when I was 15, like, it's just I thought like everybody else that I was just slowly gonna fall apart, and I was slowly falling apart, and that's what all my friends say, like, they're like, "Well, whatever, it's normal, we're just aging, we're falling apart," and then now that I'm feeling better than when I was a teenager, and I'm just getting better and better and better, I look at them and I'm like, I it's not normal. You're we're not supposed to fall apart, like, okay, yeah, when you're gonna die of old age, yeah, but, like, we're so young because 'cause they're all around my age. We're all, like, in our early mid-30s, and I'm like, "We're not supposed to be falling apart at this age. This is insanity."
Right. So what are your friends, your peer group kind of what's their reaction to this?
They I think they just have, like, blinders in front of their eyes because like, they see it, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm really happy for you," but, like, no, this is not the way that we're supposed to eat, and eventually, that's gonna bite you in the ass, and I'm like, I don't know. I've tried everything except vegans and vegetarian. I would refuse to do that because I absolutely hate vegetables. I would eat them just because I thought they were good, and I was forcing myself every single time to eat them. So, like, the only thing I haven't tried is vegan and vegetables, and the only thing that's been helping me is strict carnivore slash lion. Like, even ketovore, I noticed, like, as soon as I add spices, a plant, anything, my nose blows up immediately. Like, I can't do it.
Mm. Wow. So what is your eating like day to day? Are you eating like 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day?
I tried 1 meal a day, and frankly, I get hungry, so I don't really like 1 meal a day, so I hover between 3 meals and 2 meals a day, so depending on my hunger, but basically, I wake up, I'm usually not very hungry until, like, the afternoon, even, like, supper time, and then I'm gonna eat around supper time, and then I'm gonna eat again, like, during the evening at some point. And I usually, like, I keep all the bones because, like, I don't know why people are so obsessed with bones where I live, but it's impossible to just buy bones. Like, I go to any butcher, my farmer, anything, they're always sold out in bones. So what I do is I buy roasts and steaks with the bone, and I just cut them off, put them in the freezer, stock, and then when I have enough, I put them all in the slow cooker and I make myself some bone broth. But basically, I have these little, like, tiny little bowls like that, and I'll just make myself a little bit, like, of a bone broth, and then on the side, I'm just gonna have, like, a ribeye or ground beef or something like that, but I try as much as possible to stick to beef because I find that's what's been helping me the most with my inflammation, and that's pretty much what I do.
Nice. And so for for you at age of 34, I guess in your age group, there's been more of a push to go plant-based
Oh, yeah.
than say I would ever have experienced. So, like, do you ever see people kind of like, I don't know, pushing back on your ideas of nutrition?
Oh, yeah, they're like, "Oh, you're bad for the planet, the cows and everything," and I'm like, "You should probably," like, I try not to get involved too much because 'cause I'm not a person that likes confrontations. I'm very, I don't know if it's because I'm from the forest and there was no conflicts there, but I have a really hard time dealing with conflicts and confrontation. So I try kind of to avoid them, although I've been better with it lately because ever since carnivore, my confidence is better. As before, I would do anything to avoid any kind of confrontation or possible situation that could lead to anger. Now I can handle it a little better. So sometimes I can be a little bit like, well, I read the vegetarian myth and a bunch of stuff. And all these planet things are actually the cows, they literally, it's like 2%, and then it's a cycle. So like really it's nothing because like it's a natural cycle that goes on. So that's why I try to explain to them. And also like we don't we don't have the organs to process plant toxins. We lost our cecum. We don't have a ruminant system, and they just they don't like. I convinced two of my friends to go carnivore, and they have both had remarkable results. And also my girlfriend had terrible digestive system. She went carnivore, all healed, and she was emaciated too. I think my theory is that since she had a bunch of gut problems, her body was not absorbing any nutrients, and now she actually gained weight, and like her boob size doubled. She's like having a second puberty. It's insane. Like at 30 years old. And my other friend, he was overweight, he was depressed, he was suicidal, his joints were hurting, and he's like a little older than us. He's like 41, and he's a guitar player, so he was having a hard time playing his guitar. And he's been carnivore, I think, for 3 months now, and he lost like 30 something, around 30 pounds with no exercise. His joints, he threw away all this pain medication. He's not suicidal anymore. He doesn't have anxiety anymore. And he was like, this is life changing. It's like a new life for me. And he's so grateful. So, yeah. So the few friends that tried it were really impressed with the results.
That's awesome. Um, so just to go back on your story, you mentioned that it was really hard for you to think before to do your job and to write.
Yeah.
Um, how about now?
Oh, it's easy. Super easy. I clear mind. I can code no problem. And especially for my books. My books are like, I don't know if you watch like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, but they're very vast worlds. And that was my dream ever since I was a kid, because I became obsessed with these big fantasy world of Warcraft and Witcher and stuff like that. So that's what I'm trying to build, and building these worlds require a lot of brain power, and like it's just so much easier now. Everything is clear. Like I even building like a big timeline, and it's just I've been very productive in my novels. And like before, when I was struggling, sometimes I wouldn't write for months at a time because I couldn't find the energy or the focus. And now sometimes I finish like 4 or 5 chapters a month.
If someone was interested in getting started with carnivore and they came to you for advice, what advice would you give them?
Oh my god, I would say probably go at it gradually, because I know that can shock the system, especially if you come from a really, really bad, like, processed diet. Like, when I started carnivore, it was pretty easy peasy because, like, I was already pretty much keto without really knowing I was keto. So that's that's what I would tell them. And like the salt is really important too. Like your electrolytes, because you lose a lot of water weight suddenly, and that can really mess your electrolytes up. So like yeah, just go at it gradually and just make sure that you get your salt in, and research, go check Ken Berry, Dr. Anthony Chaffee. For women, I highly recommend Elizabeth Bright's book. It's just amazing how she describes like how our hormones and stuff work. And for just Mike Bendor, the paleontologist, he's just really interesting. And a bunch of other people, Dr. Ovadia, Steak and Butter Gal. Just do your research. Just look at all these different doctors and specialists, and you get so much information from different angles that you can put everything together, and it just makes sense. Like that's what I did. I just put a bunch of different specialists' point of view together, and everything just fit the puzzle. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know if I'm correct, but I honestly think that we are evolved to be high fat carnivores because everything just meshes together perfectly.
So, what would you say to people who claim that carnivore is too restrictive?
Too restrict. Well, I mean, the thing is like if you're still healthy and you feel like you're living your life, then sure, but the sooner the better because like eventually, like the aging thing that we're falling apart is almost it's viewed as normal, so people expect that that's going to happen, but like it's not normal. And if you want to continue living your life like you did when you were a teenager in your 20s, then I find that's a lot more freeing than eating chocolate cake every day. Like there's nothing more freeing than being able to just function in whatever hobby you love, whatever you want to do. You want to go take a walk, you want to whatever. It's just I understand because I'm a huge sugar addict. I miss my candies. I miss my ice cream. I miss all of that every day, but then I'm like, well, do you remember how sick you were? And I'm like, yeah, and I find being sick is a lot more restrictive than just eating beef and salt.
Yeah, good point. So, Josie, is there a way that people can reach out to you? Do you have any social media?
Yeah, since I'm a fantasy novelist and I'm trying to grow that to be like I I I assume it's probably never gonna get there because you have to be really lucky to be able to live off of your novels, but I'm trying. So I have an official website for my novels. It's a www.aerinda.com, and that's AERINDA. It's the name of the world. Super simple. And if you can't find it, just look on Amazon. You can find my books. Just look up for my full name, Marie-Josée Paquette, or look for Erinda. And so I have my books on Amazon. I have my official website. And I do have an Instagram. I have my personal Instagram or the Instagram for my books. So my book Instagram is Air in the World. So AERINDA and then world. And it's just in one word all together. And that's pretty much where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, I'll link to those below. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming on today, Josie, and sharing
No
your story.
problem. It was great.